Bennett, but I'm not. Oh, God. Well, I gotta tell a story from my past. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I may be nervous, but I have to confess. Of all the stories I've told all my life, not one of them were good. But I'll try on this one. I have a relative, Nico. I'm Greek. Nico's my uncle. Nico was a peasant farmer from an old village in Greece near a town called Kalamata. If you've been to Greece and you've been to Kalamata, it's a great seaside resort. The mountains are behind. Well, Nico ran an olive farm or a tree farm. He also had some sheep. And he lived in a local village outside of Kalamata. And all of his life, Nico had one wish. He was a very devout man. He wanted to see the Pope. You know, the Pope in Rome, the Vatican, that Pope. And Nico was devoted. He wanted to do his best, so he wrote to the Vatican for permission. Maybe they could help finance his trip. He wanted to go there on Easter Sunday to see the Pope. And nobody would give him any money. Nobody responded to him. And in the town of Kalamata, they ridiculed him because he never left. And he kept telling his friends, you know, this is what I want to do. Well, he tried again, and eventually Nico wrote to the Vatican, and he got a letter back from the Vatican. There were plane tickets in the envelope with a letter from the Vatican that invited him to come to Easter Sunday services in a couple of days. The tears were coming down his cheeks. He was inconsolable. He was just so happy. So he took the donkey and he went down to the local cafe in town and he told everybody, look, the Pope, me, the Pope, he's asked me to come to the Vatican. So he packed up the donkey, packed up his blanket, and eventually went down to the town square the next day, and he took the 5-hour bus ride to Athens. He couldn't believe it. So eventually he gets to the airport in Athens, and Alatalia's there waiting for him, gets on the plane. He arrives late Saturday afternoon, because Easter Sunday is the next day. So he couldn't believe it. St. Mark's Square, St. Peter's Square rather, he was just speechless. So he was there before everybody else came. So Nico took out his tent, pitched it in the square, and had his blanket there. And eventually the TV crews started to come during the evening and set up for Easter services the next day. And as you can imagine, 6 o'clock in the morning, Sunday, the crowds begin to assemble. A few hundred, a few thousands, then tens of thousands of people are in the square with Nico. Well, it's about 10 a.m. and eventually the big doors open up where the Vatican is, where the Pope comes out, and he walks out the doors, and as you know, he starts giving a prayer service in like 25, 30 languages. Well, the Pope gets to about the third language, and he stops. And he's looking over this sea of humanity, and he turns around. The doors close behind him. Never in the history of the church has the Pope stopped in midstream giving his prayers. Perhaps the TV crews were starting to speculate. Did he have a heart attack? Does he go to the bathroom? What's the deal here? 5 minutes later, the big doors open downstairs, and out comes the Swiss Guard, the folks that guard the Pope. They have the Pope on his big chair with his staff, his big hat, and they're carrying him. He didn't have a mobile in those days, those bulletproof vehicles that they have today. They had to carry him. So the Pope is slowly making his way through the sea of humanity. The TV crews are buzzing. This has never happened. The Pope stopped in midstream giving his prayers, and now he's making his way through the crowd. This never happened before, so people are stunned. News flashes are splashing all over the world. Breaking news. Pope stops prayers, mingles with crowds. What's going on here? Eventually, slowly, it becomes clear what the Pope is doing. He's moving closer to my Uncle Nico. He's getting closer and closer and closer to the tent. Now what happens? The Swiss guard bring the Pope down from his chair, and slowly but surely, the Pope has his staff here, and he's approaching Nico. Of course, the whole millions of people are watching this as this is happening. Nobody knows what's going on. Eventually, the Pope is right in front of Nico. They're talking. Nobody knows what they're talking about. For about 30 seconds, they're talking. And then the Pope steps back. And he does this. And then he turns around and gets back on his chair. The Swiss guard slowly taken back to the Vatican building. 5 minutes later, the doors open up on the balcony, and the Pope is back up. He's resuming his prayers, and about a half an hour later, he's done. He goes back in, the prayer service is over. Well, now the whole world wants to know who that guy is that the Pope just walked up to and what he said. So the TV crews, the reporters, there's millions, thousands of people. They want to know who this guy is. So eventually the microphones are in front of Nico. Nico's inconsolable, he's crying, he's mumbling in Greek, broken English. Finally, a reporter asks him, "What did the Pope say to you?" He couldn't talk. Somebody mumbled him in Greek, "Tell him, tell him." Eventually, he revealed what the Pope said. He said, when he came up to me, he shook me, and he said, "What's your name?" I couldn't believe the Pope asked me what my name was. He said, "Nico, Nico's my name." And then he said, "Nico," he said, "Nico, pick up your tent and get the hell out of here."